Hello and welcome back. You may have seen my earlier video on the Gilling to Pickering railway line, in which I also included the stations from Gilling to Husthwaite and onto the East Coast Main Line. Strictly speaking, these last stations belong on the Thirsk to Malton railway line, and the remaining stations on this line are the subject of this video. I started my journey at the village of Oswald Kirk and followed a public footpath that headed south down to the village of Corton, pausing at a point on the old railway line just outside the village.
Hello, it's Friday the 4th of June and I am tracking down the stations on the Thirsk to Malton railway. Now, I've covered the ones between Husthwaite and Gilling in my video on the Gilling to Pickering railway line. However, this is the other line that heads east out of Gilling. Now, the story I heard was that when they originally built the line, they bought enough land to have a track going in either direction, but in the event this didn't happen and they only used a single track with passing loops at various places. This left a lot of unused land to one side. So what they did at Gilling is, instead of installing points somewhat to the west of Gilling so that the trains could be diverted to head off in the direction of Helmsley, Kirby Moorside and Pickering on the Gilling-Pickering line, they simply put two tracks on. That avoided the expense of paying for points, and it avoided the expense of employing somebody to change them. So there were just parallel lines going all the way to the point where the northernmost line headed off towards Nunnington and Helmsley. This is the other track. This is the one that heads more or less directly east. So where I am now is I walked down this morning from Oswald Kirk, which is over there to the north and slightly to the west, and the village of Corton is just across a couple of fields in that direction. So what you see behind me is the railway track heading east. I will eventually get to Hovingham, where the station remains as a privately owned house. The village of Corton is over there, slightly to the south, just a couple of fields away. So that's it, heading to the east. If I turn the camera round about, I can point it in the direction of Oswald Kirk. Yes, you may just be able to see Oswald Kirk in the distance. This is quite a wide angle lens, so I might have to crop it a bit, but that is Oswald Kirk, and this, what you see behind me, is the railway heading west, where it will eventually reach Gilling, which, as I say, is covered in my other video. Right, well, lots to do. I shall press on to Hovingham now via Corton. Bye. Hello, I have now made it to Hovingham. Apologies for the traffic noise, it's on rather a busy road. However, what you see behind me is what remains of Hovingham railway station, which is now a private residence. This is the first station to the east of Gilling, heading in the direction of Malton. This stretch of line was not as popular as the route from Gilling to Pickering, and actually closed to passengers almost completely in December 1930. It was envisaged as a through route from Hull to Glasgow, but actually in the end it ended up serving local stations mainly, and after it was closed to passenger services it provided a link from York out to Gilling for trains heading up to Gilling to Pickering, but the trains didn't stop at any of the intermediate stations. However, I believe it was possible to catch a train on some summer Saturdays. Anyway, there it is. That's what remains of Hovingham railway station. I shall go and get some closer snaps, and then I will head on to the next station to the east, which would be Slingsby. So speak to you later.
This is the view of the station from the south. The track ran on the northern side of the station building. On this side there were eventually 5 sidings and another one on the other side of the track, which led to a loading bay. The first siding on the southerly side of the track led to the coal drops. 3 sidings were used for loading and unloading timber, and one of them also doubled as a cattle dock. In the 1950s, a demand for large quantities of limestone arose. It was used as a lining in steel furnaces. This was mined at the nearby quarry at Wath and loaded onto trucks at the station. This is a view looking down the northern side of the station. The footpath running down the side is in fact the platform. Much like Ampleforth Station and others on the line, this was a 2-level platform. When the new standard came in at 2'6", the platform in front of the station house remained at its original lower height. Also, the chimney at this end of the building seems to be a modern addition. Comparing it with a photograph from 1905, there is one big central window, and also the extension at the first floor of the rear building was not present. Oh, there's one other thing I should have mentioned. When the station opened in 1853, it was known as Hovingham Station. However, it was renamed Hovingham Spa in an attempt to drum up business for a local attraction. The building which I included a photograph of earlier on, known as Spa Villa, was presumably the attraction that they were trying to get people to visit. This photo was taken from a position that would have been on the railway track. If you turn around and look on the other side of the road, you can see the railway track heading off into the distance. It turns out it's actually a permissive footpath, but this wasn't marked on the map, so I didn't know anything about it. This would have provided a more direct route, but would have bypassed Corton Village. Incidentally, Corton Village is roughly the point at which the 2 lines diverged and the northernmost track turned north to head towards Nunnington. Next, I headed back into Hovingham. Just down the side of the Hovingham Inn, there is a public footpath that heads east. Eventually, after a couple of fields, you reach a point which is immediately north of Wath, and the path heads north for a short distance before rejoining the path of the railway line. This hedge marks the course of the railway line. It is then possible to follow the course of the old railway line all the way to Slingsby station, passing on the way north of the village of Fryton and a house called Greenacres House. Given its location, where Fryton Lane crosses the railway track, it may have been a gatehouse. As you pass the house on the left, you come across this sign, which shows some evidence of the railway. And so, after passing through a stretch of track shrouded by trees, we arrive at the appropriately named Railway Street in Slingsby. On the other side of the road lies Slingsby Station. In this photo you can see the edge of the platform, although the track bed has been infilled up to platform level. The single-storey building towards the front has been extended out over the platform, and the west end of the building has had an additional storey added, although you can hardly see the join in this photograph. This is another station with a dual-level platform, and, thanks to the landowner, the Earl of Carlisle, this is the only station on the line to be built of stone.
Hi, I'm back again. I've made it to Slingsby, and behind me is the remains of Slingsby railway station. I've just come from Hovingham. You can walk along most of the course of the old railway line from Hovingham to Slingsby. If you rejoin the railway line just north of a small village called Wath, and then you pass north of Fryton before coming out more or less here. at Slingsby railway station. It has been fairly well modified, and the track is now a caravan park, which is just behind me, but it's still here, which is more than can be said for Amotherby. So I shall move on now to the next one. I believe there's a gatehouse on the way. We shall see if we can spot it. Unfortunately, the railway line is no longer a public footpath to the east of here, but I can rejoin it a bit later on. I think I'll have to walk through Slingsby first, which is just to my left, i.e. the south, and then turn left along a road before rejoining the railway line. So we'll see how that goes. Speak to you later.
I headed east out of Slingsby along Green Dyke Lane and then turned to go north along Long Lane. At the point where Long Lane crosses the route of the railway line, I saw this. Could this be Crabtree Gatehouse? I think it is. I then continued briefly along the line of the old railway track before heading into Barton le Street. I then proceeded in a north-northeasterly direction until I came to Barton le Street railway station. This has been much altered and there is no sign of the platform. Also, an extension has been built over the track.
Okay, a couple of fields across from Crabtree Gatehouse, I eventually come to Barton le Street. That's right, Barton le Street. And this is the remains of Barton le Street railway station. It is in fact called the Old Station House, appropriately enough. Much altered, but looks pretty good condition. Not much more to say about that, except there is the old railway, predictably enough, goes alongside the station and heads that way. Now, it's not marked as a public footpath, but then it's not marked as private property either, so I'm going to treat it as if it's an ordinary road, which it appears to be, and I shall walk along that to the next one, which I think is possibly Amotherby, where there is nothing at all. The station has gone altogether. Anyway, onwards along the old railway line.
Well, that cunning plan didn't work out very well. Although the track started off as a pretty good unclassified road, it rapidly became somewhat overgrown and then got even worse before reaching what looked rather like an electric fence, so I gave up and came back. At this point I copped out completely and decided to catch a bus to Malton, but I have taken photos of where the station used to be in Amotherby, so here they are. This is a picture of the Queen's Head Bar and Cantonese restaurant in Amotherby. Rather good it is too. We had a Christmas meal there once. If you look on the right hand side, you'll see an evergreen hedge. On the far side of that, that was where the railway used to go. There's no sign of the station. It's been completely demolished. If you look on this other photo, you will see the BATA building, which stands for Brandsby Agricultural Trading Association. This building is known as Parks Mill and was built in 1862. The North East Railway Company provided it with its own siding and covered hoist. When the remainder of the line was closed to all goods traffic in August 1964, the stretch of track between Amotherby and Malton remained open because a contract was in place between the railway company and Parks Mill, leading it to close in October 1964. This was the last stretch of track to be lifted. The course of the railway track lies about a couple of metres to the left of the green building on the left of this picture. The photo was taken from a point which probably lay somewhere on the track itself. Amotherby is the last station on the line before one gets to Malton, although there do appear to be gatehouses slightly to the north of both Swinton and Broughton. Then the railway track crosses over the A64 and heads through a cutting towards the River Derwent. There are a number of railway bridges that carry roads over the track. Once in Malton, you can head roughly north-east up Old Malton Road. You will pass the gateways to the Old Lodge, and then there's a green space, which is the site of Doventio Roman Fort. However, crossing this space is a line of trees which heads down towards the River Derwent. These trees line the edges of the railway track and the cutting that passes under the road. I headed down into the cutting and then headed north towards the archway which carries the Old Malton Road over the railway. I should explain that in order for trains to get into Malton Station, they had to cross over the River Derwent, proceed as far as the Scarborough Road junction, the points were flicked, and then they had to back up into Malton Station. And that's all I've got for now, only to say that Malton Station is still very much alive. It lies on the York to Scarborough line. Can I also recommend that you visit the Disused Stations website, where there are lots of details on all of these stations and many, many others. If you like this video, subscribe, like, whatever. Thanks. Bye.